everyone, it's Tracy for the Love of Stamping. Welcome to my craft room. Today I'm going to give you some quick tips on how I put together this pop-out gatefold card featuring the Poinsettia Place Designer Series paper and the Poinsettia Dies. The card here has a belly band on the front, and the belly band will just slide off to open up the card. And as you can see, when you open it up, there is this pop-out piece in the center, and the card will stand up like so. So in order to make this card, you're going to need some supplies, and I'm going to give you the supply list of what you'll need. I'll also have the instruction sheets available, so you don't have to worry about taking notes, and it will go in conjunction with this video. So you'll start with a piece of 12" by 6" Whisper White cardstock. We are going to do some scoring on that. I don't know if you can see these score lines. I've already done the scoring ahead of time. I've scored it here at 5 1/4 and 6 3/4, and then I flip it over and I score at 3 inches, and I then score at 9 inches, and that will create the base for me to be able to do all the folds with. But before I do all the folding, let me give you some more pieces of information in terms of cardstock. You will need a piece of cardstock that's 12 inches long. This here is So Saffron. It's 1 1/2 by 12. This will create my belly band. This is actually retired cardstock, but you could use Whisper White cardstock since we do sell that in the 12 by 12. You'll also need some base layers for the Designer Series paper. So I've used Garden Green. These here, there's 4 of them you'll need. So they measure 2 3/4 by 5 3/4. You'll also need 2 pieces of Garden Green again that measure 2 inches by 5 3/4 inches, and 1 more Garden Green that measures 1 1/4 by 5 3/4. And each of these will have a layer of Designer Series paper. You'll have 2 of the Poinsettia Place Designer Series paper in one design, and this is measuring 2 1/2 by 5 1/2. They'll layer on top of the Garden Green, and 2 more of the same size, which is 2 1/2 by 5 1/2, that also layer on the Garden Green. For these 2 strips here, you'll have a different one. I've used the pine cones that are within the Poinsettia Place DSP, and they measure 1 3/4 by 5 1/2. And then 1 more that matches these Designer Series paper, which I said was 2 1/2 by 5 1/2, and now this one is 1 by 5 1/2. And all of those you'll just adhere with your regular adhesive. So we'll set that aside for now. For the inside of the card, I'm actually using some So Saffron and the stitched rectangle dies. And then I'm going to stamp on a smaller piece, again using the stitched rectangle dies on Whisper White. The stamp set that I've used is Pine Bough. I wanted to have this nice pine branch with the little pine needles, and I'll stamp that in Garden Green on the corner. And then I'll use the smaller pine cone, which I will stamp in soft suede, and then I'll use some Wink of Stella to make it sparkle a little bit. So I'll put that aside for the time being. And just one more thing, you're also going to have to do some die cutting. For those of you that are in my Stamp at Home Tech Club, you will be receiving this already in your kits, so you don't have to worry about die cutting these, which is great. You'll have 4 of the poinsettia flowers, and there's 4 different sizes. I'll call them extra large, large, medium, and small. And then you're gonna die, and that's in So Saffron, and then 2 die cut leaves. In order to make the front here, as you can see, I've taken some Whisper White ink as well as some Wink of Stella to change the texture and the color of the flower as well as the leaves. So in order to do that, you're just going to need to take some Whisper White craft ink as well as a sponge dauber, and then we're going to just add the ink to the edges of each of the petals and of the leaves. So I've done a few of these ahead of time, including the piece that has the the Wink of Stella, as well as I've done my 2 leaves. And let me just quickly show you how you do this. So we'll open up our our white craft ink, and using a sponge dauber, you're gonna ink up the sponge dauber just by tapping it, and as if you were striking a match, you're gonna go around the edges of each of the petals. And you wanna start with that primarily because that's going to frame the edge. And notice how I'm only coming up, you know, about halfway. As we layer each of those petals on top, you're not going to see the rest of it. So there's no point going the extra mile to do all of it. Once you get the ink around the edge, then just lightly brush the sponge over the surface of each of the petals of the flower. And that softens that look of the Whisper White cardstock. Or, sorry, the Whisper White. The Whisper White softens the So Saffron. And I'll do that on each of these. So I'll just go around the edges like so. And when we're ready to layer this together, we're going to use some Stampin' Dimensionals as well as in both sizes. And before we do that, we want to finish it off with the Wink of Stella. So it'll take a second or two for that white ink to dry, but don't go too heavy with the Whisper White when you're doing these petals, because if you do, it'll take just that much longer. And you'll notice that as you add the sponging to the surface of those petals, it tends to sort of take away the frame that you've created or the border. So I like to go back and just add a little bit more as I'm going along. So you can see it doesn't take too long to be able to go around the edges of each of these petals. You might get a little bit of white ink on your fingers, as I have already done, but oh, it's okay. It wouldn't be crafting if you don't get messy, right? All right, so we'll finish this one off, and just for the sake of time, as you can see, I went ahead and did the other ones. It's all the same sponging. You do the same with the leaves, just to give it that little bit of softness. And once we finished that, and now that it's in the light, I can see I missed a few spots. So I'm just going to touch it a little bit more. The light always helps. Give it a little bit more, like so. Then I'll grab the clear Wink of Stella, give it a little shake, and typically you would let these dry, but by the time you've got all the sponging done, the one that you did first should be dry. And you're just going to take your Wink of Stella and just brush down and across. And you don't need to go right to the end. All you're trying to do is just give it a little bit of sparkle. Mine are getting a little bit low. There we go. And it also tends to just brighten up a little bit that center section. And notice I'm not going all the way to the top, right? Because I don't want to have to, you know, use the Wink of Stella in an area that's not going to be seen. And I'm not trying to fill in every space. All I'm trying to do is just give it a little sparkle. There we go. All right, I think that's pretty good. As we move it around, we can see the sheen that's created by laying down that little bit of Wink of Stella. That stuff dries super quick, which is nice. Now, when we're gonna lay these together, I found that I used a large dimensional on this one, and then we'll use the smaller dimensionals on the others, just to make sure that it doesn't show. So we'll put one dimensional right in the center here, press it down to release the backing, and then peel it off. And then we can adhere that flower on top. One thing that I would mention is if you want to give it a little bit of depth, just stick a paper piercer or your fingernail into the center and press it down. And that just kind of lifts up those edges a little bit, like so. Okay, so now I can take this one and I'm going to offset it. Place it right in the center. Okay, and then I'll take some small ones. I wonder, maybe I could get away with a large one. No, I'm going to go small just to be safe. So I'll take a small dimensional, pop it right into the center, and just peel off that backing. Easier said than done. There we go. And then that one can go right on top. And then one more. Get my paper piercer out. That makes it a little bit easier. There we go. And we'll place that one right into the center. And then you have your little poinsettia all set to go. Using just regular adhesive, if you want to use Tombow, you can lay your two leaves into the back like so. And to finish it off, you'll use one of the beaded pearls, which I won't do at this point. But what I will show you is just the folding of the card base. So like I said before, 5 1/4 and 6 3/4. These are going to be mountain folds. So we'll do those first. That's the centerpiece, and then we bring back and valley fold those other score lines, which were the 3 and the 9. And when we're finished here, these two pieces will meet into the center. Now I'm going to grab my bone folder and give those an extra press. I want to make sure that they're down nicely and crisp. Like so. Okay, so that when you open it up, then it just pops up like so. I won't worry at this point about doing the layering of the designer series paper. That's pretty straightforward. The one last piece is, though, when you're doing your belly band, come from the back, okay, line it up so that it's even on both sides, and fold it over. Don't try and score these lines ahead of time, because as you add all the layers of the designer series paper and the other cardstock, it starts to bulk up. And if you have too much in there, then it's going to, because of its size, it will end up being too tight to put together. Now you'll notice that these don't meet in the middle, and that's okay, because when you take your poinsettia, you're going to put adhesive here and here, and it will be held together by the flower. Okay, just like so. And that's all there is to it. So enjoy making this card. Any questions, you can reach out to me. Bye for now.